Good morning, I'm Remo, and this is the Daily Signal for November 11th, 2025. Today we're starting with some remarkable news. A major homelessness charity in the UK is making history by becoming a landlord for the first time, directly providing homes to those who need them most. This innovative approach could transform how we tackle homelessness globally. Stay tuned for 9 more stories that will shape your day.
Unfiltered. Now,
Here are today's other top stories. Citizens in Delhi stage rare mass protests against air pollution, driving government to announce immediate action plans and stricter emissions standards. Taiwan demonstrates world-class disaster preparedness, successfully evacuating 3,000 residents ahead of Typhoon Feng, potentially saving countless lives. Indonesia sparks national dialogue by granting hero status to former President Suharto, opening conversations about historical reconciliation and national identity. Israel receives remains of soldier missing since 2014, bringing closure to families and marking progress in humanitarian efforts. Delhi police make breakthrough arrests in car bombing investigation, with forensic teams and anti-terrorism units advancing the case near Red Fort. Former French President Sarkozy walks free after 20-day imprisonment, highlighting European commitment to judicial accountability for political leaders. Ukraine responds to Russian power grid attacks by targeting energy infrastructure, escalating concerns about European energy security. Japan and China exchange diplomatic statements over Taiwan, underscoring ongoing tensions in East Asian geopolitical landscape. Typhoon aftermath in the Philippines claims 18 lives, prompting international relief efforts and improved storm tracking systems. Now let's dive into each story. A groundbreaking development this morning as one of Britain's leading homelessness charities announces it will become a landlord for the first time. This innovative approach means the organization will directly own and manage properties, providing stable housing to people experiencing homelessness rather than relying on temporary accommodations. The charity is currently acquiring properties and developing tenancy programs designed specifically for their clients' needs. What makes this revolutionary is the integration of support services directly with housing, combining mental health support, job training, and financial counseling, all under one roof. This matters because traditional homelessness services often struggle with temporary solutions that don't address long-term stability. By becoming landlords themselves, charities can create environments tailored to helping people rebuild their lives permanently. The model is already drawing international attention, with similar organizations in Australia and Canada expressing interest in replicating this approach. This could represent a fundamental shift in how we address homelessness globally, from crisis response to sustainable solution. Turning to environmental progress in India, Delhi residents are making their voices heard in unprecedented ways. The capital city is experiencing severe air pollution levels that reached hazardous ratings, but instead of accepting this as inevitable, citizens staged rare mass protests demanding immediate government action. The demonstrations worked. Within 24 hours, authorities announced emergency measures including stricter vehicle emission standards, industrial pollution controls, and enhanced monitoring systems. The government also pledged to accelerate alternative transportation projects, including expanded electric bus networks and metro extensions. This matters because Delhi is home to 30 million people in its metropolitan area, and its air quality challenges mirror those faced by megacities worldwide. When solutions work in Delhi, they become blueprints for cities from Jakarta to Mexico City. The human impact is profound. Families no longer have to choose between outdoor activities and their children's health. Local hospitals report that respiratory emergency visits spike during pollution events, affecting everyone from newborns to elderly residents. Most encouragingly, this citizen activism is spreading to other Indian cities, creating a grassroots movement for cleaner air that's pressuring governments nationwide to prioritize environmental health. On the emergency preparedness front, Taiwan is demonstrating world-class disaster management. Authorities successfully evacuated 3,000 residents from vulnerable coastal and low-lying areas ahead of Typhoon Fenghuang, potentially preventing significant casualties. The evacuation showcases Taiwan's improved early warning systems and community coordination. Emergency shelters were opened preemptively, and evacuation routes were clearly communicated through multilingual messaging systems, reaching diverse communities. This proactive approach contrasts sharply with reactive disaster responses we've seen elsewhere. Taiwan's investment in meteorological technology and community preparedness is literally saving lives. Early action prevents the human tragedy we too often see with natural disasters. For the global community, Taiwan's model demonstrates how smaller nations can excel in disaster preparedness through technology and community engagement. As climate change increases storm intensity worldwide, these prevention-focused approaches become increasingly valuable. The economic benefits are substantial too, preventing disaster damage costs far less than post-disaster reconstruction, freeing resources for other community needs. Indonesia is sparking important conversations about history and national identity. The government has posthumously granted national hero status to former President Suharto, a decision that's generating significant public debate and reflection. While Suharto's legacy includes economic development during his 3-decade rule, his authoritarian governance also involved human rights concerns. The hero designation has prompted nationwide discussions about how countries should remember complex historical figures. This matters because nations worldwide grapple with similar questions about their past leaders. Indonesia's open debate demonstrates democratic maturity, the ability to have nuanced conversations about history rather than avoiding difficult topics. The dialogue is particularly significant in Southeast Asia, where several countries are examining their historical narratives and working toward reconciliation with difficult periods in their past. Younger Indonesians are engaging actively in these discussions, using social media and community forums to explore their national identity. This generational dialogue could lead to more comprehensive historical education and stronger democratic institutions. In a humanitarian development, Israel has received the remains of a hostage that Hamas identified as an Israeli Defense Forces soldier killed in 2014. This return brings closure to families who have waited over a decade for answers about their loved one. The transfer represents progress in humanitarian efforts that transcend political conflicts. While broader peace negotiations remain complex, these humanitarian gestures demonstrate that even during tensions, some human concerns can be addressed. For the families involved, this development ends years of uncertainty and allows for proper mourning and burial according to their traditions. The psychological impact of not knowing a loved one's fate creates prolonged trauma that affects entire communities. Internationally, this highlights the importance of humanitarian protocols during conflicts. International organizations continue advocating for the return of remains and missing persons as fundamental human rights issues that should be addressed regardless of political circumstances. These humanitarian gestures, while seemingly small in the context of broader conflicts, often create foundations for larger peace-building efforts by demonstrating shared human values. Following yesterday's car bombing near Delhi's Red Fort that killed 10 people and injured 24 others, Indian authorities are making significant progress in their investigation. Police have made arrests, and forensic teams are advancing the case under anti-terrorism laws. The security response demonstrates India's enhanced counterterrorism capabilities. Multiple agencies, including the National Investigation Agency and National Security Guard, are coordinating their efforts, showing improved interagency cooperation since previous security challenges. The investigation involves analyzing CCTV footage, tracking vehicle ownership, and following networks that may extend beyond the immediate incident. Authorities are also working to prevent misinformation that often spreads after such events, maintaining public communication while protecting investigation integrity. This matters globally because terrorism threats require international cooperation and information sharing. India's response contributes to broader counterterrorism efforts that protect communities worldwide. The resilience of Delhi residents is noteworthy. While remaining vigilant, daily life continues, demonstrating the strength of democratic societies in the face of security challenges. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been released after serving 20 days of a jail sentence related to corruption convictions. While his legal team described the experience as challenging, the case demonstrates European commitment to holding political leaders accountable. This development highlights how democratic institutions maintain the rule of law regardless of a person's previous political position. The judicial process continues with appeals pending, showing that legal systems can function independently of political pressure. For international observers, this reinforces confidence in European democratic institutions at a time when judicial independence is being tested in various countries worldwide. The principle that no one is above the law remains fundamental to democratic governance. The case also reflects broader European efforts to address corruption and maintain public trust in political institutions, setting examples for democratic development globally. The ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia has escalated to energy infrastructure, with Kyiv targeting Russian energy supplies after massive attacks on Ukraine's power grid. These developments highlight the vulnerability of civilian infrastructure during conflicts. The attacks affect millions of civilians who depend on electricity for heating, medical equipment, and basic services. Both sides' targeting of energy infrastructure represents a concerning escalation that impacts humanitarian conditions. European nations are closely monitoring these developments as they affect regional energy security and highlight the importance of diversified energy sources. The conflict underscores the need for resilient infrastructure and energy independence. International organizations continue advocating for the protection of civilian infrastructure under international humanitarian law, while diplomatic efforts seek to de-escalate these specific targeting practices. Japan and China have exchanged diplomatic statements following the Japanese Prime Minister's remarks about Taiwan. The communications reflect ongoing tensions in East Asian geopolitics, while both nations emphasize the importance of regional stability. These diplomatic exchanges, while tense, represent engagement rather than isolation, a positive sign that communication channels remain open even during disagreements. Regional stability benefits when nations continue talking rather than cutting off diplomatic contact. The international community continues encouraging dialogue and restraint to prevent escalation of these territorial and sovereignty disputes that could affect broader regional security. The typhoon that's now approaching Taiwan previously struck the Philippines, causing 18 deaths and significant infrastructure damage. International relief efforts are expanding to support affected communities, while improved forecasting systems help prepare for the storm's next impact. Recovery operations demonstrate international cooperation in disaster response, with neighboring countries and international organizations providing assistance. These coordinated efforts represent improving disaster response capabilities in the region. The tragedy underscores the importance of continued investment in disaster preparedness and climate adaptation as storms become more frequent and intense. Looking across today's stories, we see remarkable examples of human resilience and innovation in the face of challenges. From UK charities revolutionizing homelessness solutions, to Delhi citizens driving environmental change, to Taiwan's exemplary disaster preparedness, communities worldwide are finding new ways to solve persistent problems. Even our more challenging stories show positive elements: investigations advancing in security matters, democratic institutions functioning in Europe, and humanitarian progress in conflict zones. These developments remind us that even during difficult times, human ingenuity and cooperation continue driving progress. The common thread? People taking action rather than accepting problems as inevitable. Whether it's citizens protesting for cleaner air, charities becoming landlords to house the homeless, or communities preparing proactively for natural disasters, today's news demonstrates that solutions emerge when people decide to act. As we face various global challenges, these stories provide both inspiration and practical models. The innovations happening in homelessness support in Britain could work in cities worldwide. Taiwan's disaster preparedness sets standards other nations can adopt. Delhi's citizen activism shows how grassroots movements can drive policy change. Despite the challenges we face, From natural disasters to geopolitical tensions, today's stories ultimately show human resilience, innovation, and the power of communities working together toward solutions. That's the kind of world we're building, one innovative solution at a time. That's your daily signal for November 11th, 2025. I'm Remo. Stay informed, stay optimistic, and we'll see you tomorrow with more stories that matter.
Unfiltered. Now.